Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Dissenter. I'm your host, Ricardo Lopes, and today I'm joined by Dr. Robert Borofsky. He is the director of the Center for Public Anthropology and Professor Emeritus of Anthropology at Hawaii Pacific University. He's the author of several books, and today we're going to focus mostly on An Anthropology of Anthropology. Is it time to shift paradigms? And we're also going to talk a little bit about public anthropology. So, Dr. Borofsky, welcome to the show. It's a big pleasure to everyone.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. I appreciate it.
So
I don't always get invited to YouTube channels starting in Portugal. So yeah, this is exciting to me.
Great. Likewise. So let me start by asking you this. You wrote, as I said, this book, An Anthropology of Anthropology, but what do you mean by an anthropology of anthropology exactly?
This is very fascinating to me. We have all these anthropologists studying these other societies, and some study our own, right? Mm-hmm. But do they really study their own discipline? Excuse me for the spontaneous gesture.
No worries.
It's David Graeber, the deceased David Graeber, wrote this very nice thing about this book. I have it here. Yes. He wrote, anthropologists have now spent a generation reflecting on power dynamics in the field. Mm-hmm. He says, quote, that is really, they are unlikely to be any real world consequences because we are the ones with all the power. We study all these other people and all their organizations, but we dominate because there's a power structure implicit in them. But have read almost nothing about the conditions of work, patronage, funding, and institutional hierarchy in the economy. That is the power relations under which anthropologist writing is actually produced. This was the most postmodernist thing that George Marcus tried to do, but in the end, it perpetuated the same structures. So George will be pissed at my saying that. Sorry, George. Robert Borofsky is one of the few who had the requisite courage to do so. That he said that, yeah, we have to go beyond just talking about other people's structures. We should look at our own, and not just in the writing, which the postmodernists do very well, but really the power dynamics that keep us from really facilitating significant change. The very structures of all this incessant publication is in principle good that you get it out to all these other people, but what they write and what they produce is not very legible or intelligible to many people, including myself at times. And many of the publications I just counted, not read, when they have tenure reviews. There's a study by the Carnegie Corporation, I believe, and they said half the faculty, research one universities, or maybe more than half, believe that most of their publications in tenure review are counted, not read. You just have a few things. And so there's all this movement of appearing to be intellectual, appearing to do all these things, appearing to help others. And it's not clear that they do that. And anthropology means we should look at these dynamics. Why are we dysfunctional? Why is the discipline losing importance? It had, I think, 12,000 members about a decade or more ago. It has about 8,000. The AAA, American Anthropological Association, has about 8,000 members now. It's in class sizes for anthropology and decreasing in the United States. Why has anthropologists lost its push and this turn to intellectualism and talking about postcolonialism, which sounds great, but really doesn't get the colonial structures that still exist. We'll get to that with the question of culture in a minute. But there's a sense that these people aren't very reflective about themselves in an honest way about the power relations that really shape the discipline, and they clearly shape it. And so an anthropology of anthropology is using anthropology techniques to actually look at these and try and make it anthropology. So wonders of wonders, miracles of miracles, anthropology could benefit other people in a way that they would really find helpful. That's the goal. And anthropology means being more reflective about the power dynamics that limit as being effective in serving the broader moral good. And I have
so,
David Graeber to help me with a quote, if you will.
no, of course. And so one of the things that you talk about in the book is to focus on outcomes and what results from publications
Right.
in anthropology. But I mean, why do we need, or do you argue that we need to focus more on the outcomes? Because I mean, many times when we hear academics talking, they talk about things about like pursuing the truth, finding out something about reality out there. But I mean, perhaps when it comes to the actual outcomes of the work, many times people are not so focused on that, apart from producing knowledge, of course. But I mean, what do you mean by these, and what are the outcomes that you have in mind here?
Okay, let me just go to truth. If they can find it, be my guest, but I believe it's like Don Quixote tilting at windmills.
Yeah.
It keeps him employed. It gave Don Quixote something to do, a purpose, but it's not clear to me that that does it. When I mean outcomes, if we are funded as we are by mostly by state institutions that give us taxpayers money, and we are, in other words, supported by all these people who host us and live among them. I lived for 14 months among these people, 750 people, my wife, my daughter, myself, on a coral atoll in the middle of the Pacific. The boat came out 3 times a year. These people put up with my incessant questions. They're very hospitable by and large. Don't I, so in some moral way, have a reciprocity in the most sense? They gave me a very important gift that allowed me to have a career in anthropology. Should I in turn help them? And this gets to be really intriguing, because we'll get to how can you actually help people. And saying you're going to help people doesn't really help them often. You have all these people, Ricardo, who say they're going to help you, or all these NGOs that say they're doing all these good things, or governments that say they're doing good things. It's mostly focused on appearance. What I'm going to do, and here's an example of how outcomes, is I'm giving my field notes back to the people, the original field notes back to the people in Puka Puka, and I'm putting them on the web because they have a global diaspora. They Puka Puka in the Cook Islands, in New Zealand, Australia, and other places, and let them just use it. Now, this is important because they then take it and don't trust me as a source of all wisdom. They would never do that. I'd be so foolish to do that. But they have it, and they can use it to then create their own visions, their own history, or their own present. It gives them tools to empower themselves. Now, they cannot change the economic condition. Most of them go to New Zealand. Over half go to New Zealand and live there, or live off the government dole in New Zealand. And then in doing that, though, they have all these community responsibilities that help preserve the community, help take care of these people who are having trouble. And so they try and make a community there that's socially productive and socially affirming of the Puka Pukans here. You know, just get homeless or left by the wayside. It's a caring community. And but the sense is that they will take this and use it for their own ends. I did not change the names. They got very pissed, if I can use that word, when I suggested that we just use code names, as anthropologists tend to do. They want to take credit for what they had. The idea that I would use them and then not give them credit was insulting to them. And all these people want to be able to show their children, grandchildren, their relatives or neighbors that they contributed. I think I had about 100 islands of 750. I had about 180 informants in the end, and all those are listed. The idea is to do things that let them take control, more control over their own fate. They don't have control of it, the power dynamics, and nor do they have it in New Zealand or Australia, but they do have something that can give them dignity, and it empowers them. The idea that people create their own history, as Marx famously said, not under conditions of their own making, is very true. But here they can create their own cultural traditions and in terms more of their own making. That helped answer in some small way about what I mean by outcomes. Benefiting those who, one, funded your research, and those who help facilitate it. For governments, let's just take that for a second. Why would governments not mind that you don't do a great deal of good? You should be fund all this stuff. Partly it's you see in medicine because it takes time to find the right thing.
Yes.
In anthropology, they do all these things, but what anthropologists do very well is they talk about disrupting the status quo incessantly. They talk about how they're going to have this big dynamic effect that they never do. So talking about change and doing productive things, lots of people do, lots of institutions, government, states, but they don't do it. And so all these publications that few people read are good because they keep the anthropologists busy. They keep them self-aggrandizing and trying to be important. But these trends come and go, as you raised with me in one of your questions. And what the heck is going on? Where's the value for other people who are funding them? I don't know about you, but you pay taxes in Portugal. And you would like to see the Portuguese government do something positive with them, not just let a few people prim and prime themselves about their own self-aggrandizement with books that nobody reads and don't help the people who help them do their research. That's what I mean by outcomes. Doing something that empowers the people to try and take control of their fate and try and improve the common good in the states that fund them.
Okay, but then let me ask you this, and probably some aspects of this question that I'm about to ask you will come up later on in our conversation again. But in hearing what you said there, what you answered to my previous question, I would imagine that many people, academics, intellectuals, and other kinds of people would react to what you said there by saying something like, oh, but then you're saying that science, anthropology in this specific case, but I would imagine that in your view, it would apply to all science out there, would need to have also some political goals, moral goals, instead of, as some people say, instead of being apolitical, amoral, because what matters, at least as they say, what matters is for us, if for science is to uncover the truth, and then the rest that has to do more with politics, morality, helping people, and so on, doesn't matter that much. That's for other people to deal with. And they also say that sometimes having those goals in mind might, in a way, I don't know, contaminate, in a sense, the production of knowledge. So, I mean, I want to ask you this because I really want to hear what would be your reply.
You're absolutely right, Ricardo. They say all of this. And I view this as disingenuous, it's self-delusionary in the end. I can use other words, but let's not do it in a formal interview. There's a sense of, they believe it because it's self-serving. Matthew Arnold famously said, truth is beauty, beauty, truth, and that's all you need to know. That's all you will know, I believe the ending is. And beauty, maybe, but these anthropologists are looking to say how these people lived. And it turns out, and we'll get to this perhaps, they don't really know. If you interview 5 informants in a 750, 2,000, 3,000 group community, how the heck can you say that those 5 informants are the most knowledgeable? I interviewed, as I said, well, I talked with about 180 people. I interviewed intensively about 60 people. 50 of those deemed most knowledgeable. And I could compare them with what had been said by an anthropologist who had visited them in 1935, 36, I believe it is. And I had been there in 77 to 81. Okay. Different. All these people have different views of the old system. They have different views of which fish exist in Pukapukan waters, which fish hooks the Pukapukans gave to the Fish Museum in 1937 or so, which material culture they had in 36, 37 when the Beagle did the research. I'm not sure I have the exact date there, but it's in the late 30s. Okay. And people differ. Diversity is one of the central elements, not only of this human species, but I think life on Earth. It has all this diversity. They just found some new species off, I think, Chile, in the underwater, the mountain range. They keep on finding differences. And all these species, all humans are absolutely not alike. All the people in this small island of 750 people are not alike. To say there's an American culture, that's a little iffish. Because we certainly know Americans are quite different at times. And that's a political statement. The idea that people are going after truth, I want to know really what they're doing with it. It's a camouflage for actually trying to just go on and do what they want. Because they don't, what is truth? They're talking about building cumulative knowledge. Great. But if they do that, let's have their field notes out in the public. There was, as I mentioned in that book, in Lancet, there was about 80% of the medical research is worthless, they said, Lancet of all places. And others have done this because all of this shadiness, they don't give you all the data, they distort it, they have all this imperfections. The National Institute of Health, the largest funder of health projects in the world, is now demanding everybody put their field research on their research data in an archive that can be publicly accessible. There's a new movement I just saw in The Economist about, well, it's been going on, but there's a new journal, a new editorial journal, important journal, that's saying that everybody has to show the data. If they're going for truth, great. Maybe you can show us the data that brings you to that truth. Because claiming truth, what makes you not a false prophet? What makes you any more than a political charlatan?
Yeah.
That's self-serving, trying to aggrandize yourself and avoid moral responsibilities to the people who funded you and the people who helped you. I can go on in a more pointed way, but I think I should.
No, of course, but I guess we'll have more time to explore more details surrounding that in later questions. So I would like to ask you now to get a little bit more into the theoretical aspects of all of these, the things you explore in your book. What is culture exactly? What does it mean?
What do I use culture? I'm not really sure what culture is, let's be clear. Anthropologists have a very clear definition. If you look in an anthropology textbook, you will see various definitions, but they differ. Do they share a common view? Do they allow people to interact with one another? Pukapukans interact with one another all the time, and yet they don't share common views. Like straight, you talk about property, Americans interact with one another, so they don't share common views politically. Does that mean because they interact and talk with each other, they have a distinctive way of talking? It doesn't seem to me very different from in Mexico or Canada or the United States, from Europe. People have all these different ways of interacting and negotiating, and those negotiating styles are just to one group of people. And in terms of content, which is what usually refers to culture, people don't all share that confidence for sure. They have vague understandings, and if Pukapukans can't agree on which fish are in their waters, they can't agree which the old fish hooks were. They can't agree in the present social organization. They can't agree on who owns a particular piece of land, and they heededly don't. I'm not sure we can say there's a unified culture. Kroger and Cluckholm long ago found, I think, 150 definitions of culture. And there's all these things. Norbert Elias, nobody knows, and you might not have had this in your other interviews, talks about civilization and culture. Marshall Sahlins mentions this. That's how I came to it. And the idea of culture is this unifying during the German Romantic era, all these different Prussian German states, and got them unified. He did it politically, but it just doesn't work. All these people are different. And if you're an anthropologist, you can go interview 5 or 6 trusted informants. John Whiting once told me you only need 3 good informants to get out about the culture. I didn't challenge him because I was a graduate student and time talking to him on the phone. But no, if you want to know what the group of 750 people are, well, first of all, you have to sample them more effectively. And you have to say which group and young people not. As I interviewed 16 of the older people, it seems more knowledgeable about, I think, 30. One second. I interviewed 80 informants all the time. It's been 40 years, so I'm a little rusty. But there's a sense, and then I talked to those the most knowledgeable about the subject, and all they differed. And then they came together in a group. They came to a common version. And then when they left, they went back to their own original versions. They were just being polite in the group. So there's all this fluidity about what culture is, what people believe in, what they think. That's okay. People are doing these things. They're responding to context. They're shaping the behaviors. There's certain things from the past that shape them in the present. These are all known and very true. But it doesn't mean that one group has a unique thing that's only not shared with other people. It's probably shared widely with a variety of people. I utterly defy you to tell me what American culture is.
I mean, it's complicated. I guess you would have to look at different at people with different socioeconomic backgrounds, with different subcultural backgrounds, if you want to call them that. And I mean, of course, we can talk about it would be very hard to talk about one unified American or Portuguese or whatever.
Yeah, I was going to then say, what do you think of does Portugal have a united culture?
No, I don't think so. I mean, even just the simple fact of comparing, for example, people from rural areas to people who live in cities or something like that,
Right.
the urban areas. I mean, there are many evident differences there. So
even the people who live in that city or even in a rural village differ.
Yeah.
Human diversity, and some of them just differ for spite. They just like being different than someone else. And so the idea of this unified culture, so I'm not sure what culture is. Anthropologists have grasped onto it as an identity marker. Yeah. But the notion that they have this culture is a very colonial vision, if I could say it gently, that they're trying to say, you can fit all these people into one nice box, which is what Boaz did in his sense of culture, the Eskimos. But there's a sense that of anthropologists are ignoring all these differences, and that to frame them as a collectivity without their individuality, without their diversity, is very colonial. It's very talking about in a colonial way that imperialism framed the world.
So we'll come back to that colonial aspect in a second, but let me just ask you then, what is then the object, or what are the objects of study of cultural anthropology? I mean, what kinds of questions does it deal with?
To me, it's my view, cultural anthropology is rather important. If we live in a world of diversity, it's absolutely stamped in us of human differences. Well, cultural anthropology, or social anthropology, or however you want to call it, and it's beyond me how they call it, is to try and help understand human differences and find common ground among them. What you want to do is understand how other people think, frame their perspectives in the diversity, and try and have common good come out of this, helping them, as well as you, to find ways to work together, find common solutions. We're right now in a problem of climate change, and it's a very iffish proposition whether we will get to the stated Paris Agreement. I think we're going to pass it pretty soon, about climate change. And there's a sense that people, can we find ways to frame things to help one another?
Yeah.
And all these things. There's enough conflict, there's enough violence, there's enough misunderstanding, there's enough stereotyping. Oh, the Portuguese, if you go to Spain, they will say the Portuguese are this way. You go to Portugal and say, oh, the Spanish are this way. That's all. It's a political tool. And if you can get below these political tools, try to understand people on their own terms and what is meaningful and what motivates them, and try and bring good to in some sort, certainly to the people that you worked with, and certainly facilitate policies of the state so that funded you, not for their own self-interest, but for others. That would seem to me not a bad place to begin. But you're working with people, not telling them how to help them. Your mother probably tells you how to help you. You don't like it. My mother's dead, but I didn't like it. But you have to work, interact with people, participatory, if you will, but you don't frame the things. It's intriguing to think about giving people back the field notes, not because they will use it in my terms, they'll use it in their terms, and they do all sorts of different things. And they'll dispute much of what I say, perhaps. Fine, but it gives them a way to feel empowered in shaping their future. You want to help people feel empowered in shaping their future in a world that doesn't encourage that necessarily. So cultural anthropology helps you engage with human differences, understand them better, and try and find common good in a way that helps improve the human condition, especially for the people you work with.
And what would you say are some of the biggest challenges of doing ethnographic work?
I'm glad you ended with ethnographic work, because what I said is a really big challenge, but we'll get to that, I presume. Okay. Trying to really, and ethnographic work is absolutely wonderful. You go in and you live with people and you interact with them. You come to understand how they envision the world. Mm-hmm. This is really great. How they do things, Malinowski famously said about living among them and how that's helped seeing everything, versus quite direct with living on the porch in Israel with the Australian Aborigines, having people come to him and tell them these answers. But the question of the problems, you have to talk to a lot of people. You have to stay there a lot of time. 1 year seems sufficient. Suppose if you just do 4 or 5 informants. I did 80 at least, and guess, and all these other people who helped me. I stayed there 41 months. You need to sort of really go there, and you have to ask big questions. The question I asked that led me off was that the Beagle hosts had been there. I'm trying to find out the exact date. I'm a little embarrassed here. When they did in the late 30s, and they had all this material, and compared what people said about the past with what they had. It turns out they were in the midst of a cultural revival, the Akatawa system, in which several key informants, prominent informants, said they had, remember, living through in the earlier years. There have been 5 anthropologists before me and all this government reports. no one ever mentioned. So the question I dealt with in the first book was, did the Pukapukans invent a new tradition, or did the anthropologists err in quoting an old one? And the answer is, I said both. The Pukapukans are always revising the past. It's very Polynesian, very Pacific Islander, to bring it up to date so it's meaningful to them, and bringing it up to date, it empowers them because they then take charge of what they believe is other traditions. It's one thing to listen to your parents tell you how it was in Portugal in the old days. It's another thing for you to take those, change them around, make them what you think is meaningful, and then say to your children, this is how it is. This is how it was. It empowers you as a person. Now I lost my sense of track for a second. Ethnographic fieldwork. The problems of ethnographic fieldwork is to have all these different views and to understand that people present that to you, like, particularly in a group of others, may be just trying to look positive as a friend. And clearly when they get into these groups, I have it very clearly recorded. I have one view before they get to the group, and another group in the view when they get in the group, and then different, probably somewhat close to the original view when they leave the group. So that all this view is things, you have to understand with the complexity of it. But in getting some of this is better than nothing. Stereotyping Portuguese as blah, 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 versus actually engaging with Portuguese and getting a sense of them, having appreciation. And God knows about Americans, the tremendous diversity and right now, of course, for me, sadness about what's going on is really, you have to engage with that to understand it. I think it's fair to say America is a land of possibility, but the problem is a lot of possibility. And how do these people envision? How do they have hope? What do they do in this? So you engage with people, and that's what ethnographic does. And trying to do it with a broader sample. I guess I'm getting here to the back point. I'm sorry for being wordy. You have to engage with a broad number of people over a long period of time to get a good sense. That would have been the short answer I should have given you at first.
And so when it comes to the practice of cultural anthropology, and perhaps going a little bit back to one of the points you made at the beginning of our conversation, in what ways does the academic context shape it?
Shapes it very clearly. It pays the academic salaries. It makes it, it gives it a place to be. You do know that in the early days, we would say in the 1870s, anthropologists did not reside in universities. Often they resided in museums, and the small detail relates to that. The American anthropologists originally gave people, when they gave their affiliation, they gave their home addresses. With Boas and the rise of anthropology from him, they started giving the university affiliations. The academic, and today the academic affiliations certainly affect who can get a job, where those in the elite schools tend to get more jobs, definitely get, maybe often tend to get more jobs than those at lower status universities. But the very sense of publishing all this material, which goes back to the 1700s, at least in Germany, they said professors had to publish things to get people to know they were doing something, as well as bring in funding, which is what it does today, is that, let me just think how to phrase it. I lost track for a second, just thinking about Germany. That the question is, what is cultural anthropology? Oh, tied to the academics.
Mm-hmm. How the academic context shapes the practice of cultural anthropology.
How to put that was a warm-up for the base, because I'm going to be much more direct. It shapes their impotence. It makes them so they appear to be doing all these dynamic issues. They certainly come to some clearly, like Michael Mead and others, really stir public debate. But by and large, all these publications, all these things, don't go anywhere. And that's, in my view, purposeful, because it means that universities aren't threatened. They don't have to threaten their fundraiser, just with this whole issue of Gaza. All these academics being told that they have to be, or students being told they have to be very careful about not being anti-Zionist or anti-Israeli. The Palestinians are clearly suffering and having these massacres. And what to a degree, genocide depends on how you define genocide, but they supposedly have to behave. They can't go around protesting too much about what is really, to my mind, despicable thing. Israelis have got out of hand, excessive. What happened there is the initial attack by the Palestinians was deeply unfortunate, but the response is far more unfortunate. And they keep it down. They don't have the academics say too much, and though there was protests at first, they all become softer. Presidents become softer. Because they want the funds, they don't want to lose their jobs. It becomes it has appearance of disruption, change, without being that. The academics have them now write all these publications that are somewhat like vapors of vapors. They just don't matter that much. And shouldn't we be trying to help others if we get money, if we get help from them? It's something, it's a bit moral. Academics, while talking moral, often is very self-serving, aggrandizement of individuals. Talking about how important they are, and they talk about all this good they're doing. It sounds good. I don't know if it is good, because we don't see their data and we don't see what's really happening. When all these people say the people they lived among love them, if you're the only source of that, what do you believe? You want to see the field notes. You want to see their data. You want to be able to do good that benefits others besides yourself. And academics allows you to get away with talking about truth and beauty. Well, not beauty, but I'm adding that. That doesn't exist as a way of conning out your own self-aggrandizement and the political pacifization of you in terms of the broader good when you're in the academy. I think that covers it. It could be more vocal, but gets the bigger basic idea. It's highly provocative, as you can imagine. A few people sort of agree with me, maybe agree with me temporarily, but that's really what's going on. The hegemonic structures of the university, hegemonic in a revised sense of it, sub-hegemonic, or whatever you want to use, what's calling the term, keep university professors, academics, politically passive, so the school can get more money. It doesn't disrupt the funders or those who support them, while glorifying in all these publications that they have that don't, in the end, do a lot. They say they build truth up here, but if they don't show the data, who the hell knows? There was I mentioned Philip Salzman, who quotes someone else, that says, when you try and bring different anthropologists together about a particular region or even Spain, and you try and find out how they add up together, it's very difficult. They have all these different things. You want to see the data and how they come to it. It's a way of trying to get a broad understanding that can benefit others.
But these hegemonic structures that you talk about there, where do they stem from exactly? Is it from the sociocultural context they exist in?
Yeah, Gramsci is a good person to begin with, but he talks, he was this poor guy in prison for so many years, scribbling notes in prison, passing them out. He gives it these broader frameworks in which we operate, and we're focusing on everyday life and the details of it. We don't see a bigger picture. And the bigger picture is the way those in power maintain their power. Basically, it's a power thing. It comes from the cultural context, but it's pervasive among humans. I think, don't know, but I think it's, well, let's say very common in human societies. That people cannot grasp the bigger picture. The tools impress them, so they try and defend against it. They try and do things, but they can never succeed. By opposing something, they actually reinforce it, because the citizens just see they're opposing it, they have freedom, they're just not succeeding. But in fact, the very structures don't allow them to succeed. And here, anthropologists and intellectuals could help illuminate this hegemonic structure. They're not doing a good job of that, certainly not anthropologists.
And I mean, going back to one of the points you've alluded to earlier in our conversation, what are, would you say, the drawbacks of specialization?
You don't see the bigger picture of the hegemonic things. People talk about these, and there's some very good things, like, Philippe Bourgoin, Nancy Shepherd Hughes, particularly Paul Farmer, talks about all these bigger issues. But they tend to get lost in the rush of forward interest. You're able to keep control of what you're studying. But if I specialize in anthropologists now, specialize in subtopics or subfields within that society, you miss the broader dynamics going on in the society. It lets you feel like you have control over something. But you're feeling control doesn't mean you're adding full knowledge, particularly if you're not showing others how you got the data and how they can then confirm or not or get other broader perspectives. Yeah. Puka right, in that fieldwork. I've talked to various ones. I had a public display, my own public display with them before I put out these notes, which I'm about to do within the next 2 or 3 months. They were very respectful to me and so forth. When they get them, they will argue with me. They will argue this and that. That's to be expected. They're trying to empower themselves. That's what academics do. They're trying to empower themselves, elbowing everybody else in their own things, saying they're interested in truth. I did, as you may know, about the Yanomami experience. Some of those people are very nice people. Ray Haynes I particularly like. That's one that I like, but they just have to go at each other. They just can't stop. They're not really interested in truth in my mind, as much as scoring points and writing more articles. At the end, I'm feeling more empowered. It just goes on and on. Hello, couldn't we do something better? Couldn't we have the people who are helping us?
Yeah. So I would like to get into the topic of public anthropology, but just before that, could you tell us what post-colonialism really means? Because many times we hear people talking about it, but they tend to be very dismissive. Some people say that it's, I mean, actually not real science, but I would like to hear, as someone who proposes a post-colonial approach, I would like to hear from you what it really entails.
This is very interesting. A good rule to show that I'm not fully encouraged to take on the system is I shouldn't tell you the truth here. I think postcolonialism, it was very hot about 20 years ago. Came back now with a roar. Because anthropologists need something to write about. All these trends are because they need things to write about. They write about them, and then, like a slash and burn economy, it gets filled up with all these weeds and things. So they have to go on to something else. I think Anthony Wallace in 1960 said that, too long before most people's time. Maybe it was Eric Wolf. I don't know. Sorry. Anyway, the idea, postcolonialism.
Mm-hmm.
Since we're pretty much still in colonialism, I'm not sure what post is. Talking about postcolonialism, where does this postcolonialism exist? It may be like what Gertrude Stein said of Oakland in a famous quote, which I presume you do not know. He said, "There's no there." She was saying about San Francisco, but it was really Oakland. There's no there. Where is a clear delineation of people embracing postcolonialism in more than rhetoric? And they talk about participating and helping these people. God knows the colonial regimes did that as well. In some places like Uganda or Nigeria and Adele, did a very good job at times in helping in his time, in his terms, and what's happening now in Nigeria. Uganda is sad, to my mind, that there's a sense of people did good then, they're trying to do good now. It seems to me is an elbowing out of the old to try and put themselves into new and be prima donnas. Maybe I shouldn't. In the article by, in my old days, I forget, it was an American anthropologist, former president of the American Anthropological Association, is suggesting it makes me less effective to be old and not remember everybody's name. My apologies.
That's understandable.
Something. The article was just trying to tear down the old. And it makes no sense trying to do that unless you're trying to, slash and burn economy, just make more space for your new publications, which it's doing. But what the hell goes on if you're just focusing on new publications and not helping others, benefiting others, particularly those who helped you, who you benefit from? It's just another, saying, I'm going to really live to regret this. It's just another scam. You're talking about all these new things, denigrating the old as a way of being able to publish new things. But the focus is on publications, declaring something new, rather than trying to do something good. I understand good is like truth. It's very vague and so forth. But if you can empower the people in a way that they can feel good about trying to address their problems, that's very good. Related to that, one of the themes in America, there's tremendous inequalities, more so than in Portugal or Spain and so forth. Horrendous ones. But many of the people get up in the morning with a sense of hope, of possibility that they can improve their lives. It may not be true, but this ideology makes life more livable. So they do that in the sense of trying to help people feel empowered and more hope. It's not a bad way to go, rather than just trying to publish more publications that's cited by so many people and within such a period of time. I'm doing a project with All Metric, which you may have heard of. To what degree people are cited and their publication is cited in the public realm, going to the newspapers of the world, and that will be coming up soon. But I've tried to encourage them with saying, here's the people who are doing this. And I try to say, here's departments. Now I'm going to, next month or two, talk about a ranking system. Here's these universities or departments, here's their rank. And here's the people who are contributing to that ranking. Here's the people who are not. And if the people who are not doing it could publish more in the public realm, they would get a higher ranking. I don't know. But the idea is trying to get people out of their narrow niche and do broader good. I mean, what the is going on here? Is this just a talk show in which people can say what they want and do what they want? Is there no moral basis for what we're doing here? The answer is no, there isn't. Sadness at the present moment, but also probably early moments. But intellectuals having a very protected lifestyle could do more, should do more for helping improve the human condition.
And so, what is then a public anthropology?
Okay, I coined the term. I thought everybody would say, oh yeah, this is good. My first surprise of coining it was all these people started arguing with me about what it meant and about finding other terms, engaged in anthropology. So applying anthropology, who I thought would be really good to work with, and we have all these overlapping things, really trying to ice me out, saying, oh, you know, it's all applying anthropology. I mean, in the end, what is this all about? This is just giving people more space to publish, to argue about these things. Public anthropology was very clearly a series that came out of the California series in public anthropology. It's now being continued on University of California Press. So, but as I talk to you here, it's sort of a vision of dealing with public problems in public ways that can make a difference to others. And some way I have all these different definitions I bring up. I'm just a little liberal myself about what it means. I'm not sure. I haven't been there. I'm just shocked to see all these people arguing with me about it. Like they knew what, trying to just claim it and elbow me out. Though it's had an impact, there's various programs there was for a while. I just saw Current Anthropology, which they had a public anthropology forum, I believe, in there. It's been used in various ways, but a lot of people have tried to co-opt it into their own ends, and they're doing reasonably well in their own terms. But I don't believe that's what public anthropology is. It's what I'm saying, trying to help others, benefit others, do good that empowers other people in ways that they can feel good, can have hope in the future, not just the oppression.
And what specific issues does it address?
The world, but particularly, as I've said in Anthropology of Anthropology, the hegemonic structures that limit anthropologists from doing squat. They keep them talking about these dynamics and talking about this, blah, 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 and not doing very much. They talking about maybe they've made a difference, but it's a question of whether they have. The hegemonic structures that we talked about earlier, or maintaining the status quo, seem to work reasonably well. People don't change. That's what I'm trying to point out. And as you perhaps know, it's a losing battle. People are going to just, systems going to dominate. And I, in my retirement in Hawaii, with enough funds, will just keep on making the point, trying to remind people there's something more than their own self-aggrandizement, more than just their own self-interest, that they should be helping others in the world, benefiting others, particularly people who help them on the state to make the human life, to improve the human condition. not by cutting down trees and publishing more books, but by helping the people feel more empowered about trying to do good. It's a very complex issue, but what good means and all these things, and by trying to empower them so they have more control over their own fate.
And when it comes to the ethics side of things here, does I would imagine that it also includes the way we do ethnography and the way we treat the subjects of study in anthropology, namely the people from, for example, traditional societies and elsewhere.
I'm not sure what traditional is, just an aside.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We go to these places.
Yeah.
We say, oh, this is a traditional society because it's not like us, and we're the center of dynamic change. We have no idea, as Graeber and the other person in the History of Dawn talked about, these societies are always changing. So traditional, I'm not sure. It just means not like us, but I know exactly what you mean.
I mean, let's say then non-industrialized societies.
Right.
Perhaps
The
that way.
ethics, maybe, just maybe, that should be something you negotiate out with the people themselves. You come with these rules. You're not supposed to cite them by name in your field work, which pisses the Pukapukans off tremendously, as I said to you before. They want to be cited. What am I, icing them out, making them nameless characters? There's a sense of negotiating those ethics with the people in an honest way. You do not want me to tell you, Ricardo, how you're supposed to lead your life according to my ethics, and you have to negotiate that with me, or I with you, that we have to talk about it. And so let's leave ethics, philosophical study, open, because it's violated all the time, and try and deal with the people themselves. Here's a tricky situation. Chagnon, viewed as now deceased, viewed as unethical. Should he have given guns to these Yanomami, who then proceeds to turn around and kill Yanomami? The Yanomami who got the guns really liked it. Yanomami got killed, did not. And it turns out supposedly, I don't know if it's true, so the missionaries were involved in some of this. It gets to be this whole can of worms and so forth. It's never easy. But the question is, I think, what groups are you dealing with, in what terms, and how can you find something that will work? Did Neil, in all his work with the Yanomami for the National Atomic Commission, he's getting a little erudite here, but the Yanomami controversy, I don't believe Neil tried purposely caused an epidemic among the Yanomami, trying to do good, but it's often, but he never consulted them. Consulting with people goes a decent long way to try to make things work between you. That would be my take on ethics. Talk to the people, listen to them, rather yet, listen to them, negotiate what will work for both parties.
And do you think there is enough collaboration across subfields in anthropology?
Short answer is no. The proper answer is yes. I did this paper some years ago. It said basically the cooperation among subfields, which is very important to some anthropologists to the establishment, is a myth. And I went through the old American anthropology articles from the beginning to the present, showed most of these were very separate, distinct features. Kroeber could deal with physical anthropology or biological anthropology now. He could deal with linguistics. He could deal with archaeology. He could deal with ethnography, cultural anthropology, but they didn't all combine. In some ways, the association, because as members from all these different specialties want you to combine, want you to collaborate. It seems to me it's not a bad thing, a good thing. Try and collaborate, not out of appearance, but out of substance. But you should collaborate with a lot of other people beyond this field. You shouldn't just limit to that. You try and, instead of dealing with a field, with a discipline, try and deal with problems. How to ease the pain in certain situations of people who are suffering. Most places anthropologists go in these more non-Western settings live under what could be termed repressive political environments. You do not want to get kicked out of the country the next day, so you try and behave in some modest way, perhaps, but what can you do to help? And maybe just giving them information that they can then get themselves in trouble over, they can then feel empowered about, they can do things, may be good. Giving people the tools they need to empower themselves, that's what education is supposed to do. Give others the tools, so maybe you're trying to just help them figure out how to do things. But
no, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go on.
Okay. Now, I had one last question then regarding public anthropology. So what would you say are the main obstacles to it?
I'm going to get in trouble again. In principle, I should be well behaved. My personality, I guess. I'm too feisty. Here. It's a self-aggrandizement of anthropologists in the hegemonic structure of academia that prevents real political change, that prevents these people from doing more than talking about change, appearing to help others in doing squat, to really focus on others. Just a simple, straightforward thing. And you are, seems to me, a sophisticated person, talk to lots of people. I'm going to ask you this question. How many anthropologists, how many researchers do you know that have put their research notes, their field materials onto the web for others to see?
I mean, no one I know of. I don't think I can name anyone. Unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree with it, unfortunately. And I'm embarrassed and somewhat nervous here that I'm doing this. It's taken a while to get all these. Unfortunately, I have 14,000 pages of field notes because I was here for 41 months. And then I have, in addition, piled some earlier field notes. So there are 16,000 to go. But I'm under the impression they haven't done that. They could simply make it, do it, be more post-colonial, if you will, to let others empower themselves rather than dictating how that empowerment will go by making them public on the web. Pukins will not, I said that the Akutawa system that they were under, try to say it somewhat gently, but I said it was a myth. They had never really existed. Do you think that slowed down the Pukins? Did I become criticized incessantly? They said, that's Rob's position. That's not mine. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I do. I know what my grandfather told me, what I experienced. And they just go on. They can dismiss it. The field notes will have important comments about particular people, and they'll laugh and say, yeah, that's true of that person, or that wasn't me, or that. But they're used to this back and forth. You walk out your door and people say nice things and not so nice things. That's just life. And as you look at me carefully here, I'm not God. I'm not some expert person. I have 14,000 pages of field notes here. from surveys, but there's a sense of it's just one more view that they can take and use for themselves. But why don't we give them tools for their own empowerment by showing the field notes? I came in this by accident. not great insight here. But I'm saying, oh, I was going to give them to the University of Auckland Library because I had all this notes, and then I had retired. And then said, oh, maybe they'd scan them. And that meant maybe, who knows when that would happen. And then I decided I can scan them myself here in Hawaii. It turned out to be a lot longer than I thought. And then the University of Auckland did not want them because they weren't just these unique things that only them would have. I said, that's great. I'll just put it on the web myself. I have the ability to do that. And so that's the next 2 or 3 months. I'm hoping in 2 months, maybe less, but down who knows. They will all be out there. And then the idea is to let Pukapukans use them and have people help them from the community make sense of them in ways that they can use more effectively. Will it stir up arguments about land? Absolutely. But instead of just one person giving a view of that land, they have several. And I can assure you they won't just believe me in an argument, they believe whatever they want. So that gives them empowerment. That's a post-colonial view. And like you, I haven't found anybody. It makes me a little nervous. What the heck am I doing here? But that's right. It should be done. NIH does it. There's a movement about doing it more. As I said, may have said, Lance said 80% of the research was useless because there was all these ways of not being able to replicate anything, or not just, you can't replicate anthropological fieldwork in a sense, but you can get a sense of how you came to it. Other people were there, and I can see how they came to their conclusions, and I can differ with them. That's how we should proceed. So if we're going after truth, beauty, something else, cumulative knowledge, maybe we should start with being a little vulnerable and open up your field notes.
So, Dr. Borofsky, just before we go, would you like to tell people where they can find you and your work on the internet?
That's Center for Public, I think it's publicanthropology.org, in which they will be in the front page there, right, being done now. There'll be Pukapukan field materials. You can see that. You can go look at it now. And then there'll be under that public anthropology series, I think it says, and that will have more books. But if they have the basic materials here, I would encourage them to think for themselves and try and do something that gets them out of these hegemonic structures and self-serving structures that really benefit other people. I mean, what the hell? What's going on here? I think it's a bit of a scam that we talk about helping all these other people. And we clearly do, in some ways, we clearly help empower some things, and we don't others, but we clearly try. And we should do more than just talk about it. It's more than a talk. There's a famous thing by Eldridge Cleaver, wasn't getting old. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And the idea is that these people just talk and talk about doing concrete things, and they don't necessarily. So I'd like, you can read some more of my stuff. It's what you said. You can read the field notes and see what Pukapukans think of it. But in these other projects I'm doing, I'd like them to try and do innovative things themselves. How can they get this anthropology, cultural anthropology in particular, perhaps, to be more beneficial to others, particularly the people they work, who help facilitate their work, and to the broader community that funded them in a way that reduce some of the suffering in the human condition today.
Mhm. So I think that's a great message to end on, Dr. Borofsky. And thank you so much again for taking the time to come on the show. It's been a real pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. I think I got carried away a little bit in saying things that I very much believe, but they're probably not going to go down too well with some people. But I appreciate you asking about these, Ricardo. And thank you for this conversation.
Hi guys, thank you for watching this interview until the end. If you liked it, please share it, leave a like and hit the subscription button. This show is brought to you by Enlights, Learning and Development Done Differently. Check their website at enlights.com, and also please consider supporting the show on Patreon or PayPal. I would also like to give a huge thank you to my main patrons and PayPal supporters: Per Ergo Larsen, Jerry Mullerens, Frederick Sunda, Bernardo Seixas, Olaf Alex, Adam Kessel, Matthew Whittingbird, Arno Wolf, Tim Hollis, Eric Alenia, John Connors, Philip Forrest Connolly, Dan Demetri, Robert Windiger, Rui Inácio, Zup, Mark Neves, Colin Holbrook, Phil Kavanagh, Mikkel Stormir, Samuel André, Francis Fortiago Nunes, Fergal Cossen, Hal Herzog, Nuno Machado, Jonathan Labyrinth, João Linhares, Stantanti, Samuel Correia, Eric Hines, Mark Smith, João Eira, Tom Hummel, Sardus France, David Sloan Wilson, Yacila Dez Araújo, Romain Roach, Diego Londonho Correia, Yannick Punter, Dana Rusmani, Charlotte Bliss, Nicole Barbaro, Adam Hunt, Pavlo Stasevski, Nelek Bach, Guy Madison, Gary G. Allman, Sam Afzal, Adrian Yeagy, Paul Tolentino, João Barbosa, Julian Price, Edward Hall, Edin Bronner, Douglas Fry, Franca Bortolotti, Gabriel Ponce Cortez, Ursula Litsky, Scott, Zachary Fish, Tim Duffy, Sonny Smith, John Wiseman, Daniel Friedman, William Buckner, Paul George Arnaud, Luke Lowacki, Georgios Theophanous, Chris Williamson, Peter Wolozin, David Williams, Diogo Costa, Anton Erickson, Charles Murray, Alex Shaw, Maury Martinez, Coralie Chevalier, Bangalore Atheists, Larry Dealey Jr., Old Erringbone, Sterry, Michael Bailey, Dan Sperber, Robert Grassi, Igor N., Jeff McMahon, Jake Zool, Barnabas Radix, Mark Campbell, Thomas Dovner, Luke Nissen, Chris Story, Kimberly Johnson, Benjamin Galbert, Jessica Nowicki, Linda Brandon, Nicholas Carlson, Ismail Benzliman, George Coriatis, Valentin Steinman, Per Crowley, Kate Van Goller, Alexander Hubbard, Liam Dunaway, BR, Masood Ali Mohammadi, Perpendicular, Jonas Hertner, Ursula Goodenough, Gregory Hastings, David Pinsoff, Sean Nelson, Mike Lavigne, and Dios Necht. A special thanks to my producers: Isar Webb, Jim Frank, Lucas Stafiniak, Tom Vanagdam, Bernard Ugni, Curtis Dixon, Benedict Mueller, Thomas Trumbull, Catherine and Patrick Tobin, Giancarlo Montenegro, Alnick Ortiz, and Nick Golden, and to my executive producers Matthew Lavender, Sergio Quadriano, Bogdan Kanivets, and Rosie. Thank you for all.